Today, as we celebrate my younger brother's wedding, his bride-to-be, Chloe, confronted me. Her words echoed loudly, clear enough for everyone to hear, slicing through me sharply. The mere thought of my brother's wedding had initially filled me with happiness, but here I was, facing humiliation in front of our relatives. The sting of her remarks burrowed deep within me, spreading a cold wave throughout my body. The once festive environment turned somber in an instant, replaced by a tense silence. I wondered if I was the only one rattled by this, or if the guests too began to view me differently. I could feel the chill of their stares, as if a silent consensus had formed that I was an outsider. Chloe's piercing gaze and sharp tone left no room for doubt. She saw me as nothing more than a burden. "You really don't belong here, Layla," her eyes accused. I wanted to defend myself, but my words faltered, choked by a mix of anger, sadness, and frustration. Each breath was strained, and my legs trembled beneath me. Despite my desire to refute her, part of me feared she might be right. Over the years, I had indeed relied heavily on Hudson, perhaps more than I realized, and maybe I had strained his relationship with Chloe. Even if I was part of the problem, Chloe's harsh delivery was unnecessary. Her words were meant to demean, to ensure I knew my supposed place. Finally, I spoke, my voice hardly recognizable to my own ears. "I understand," I managed, the words sounding as though someone else had uttered them. It had been a challenging day, both emotionally draining and quietly tense, but all I could articulate was a calm facade as I stood up. My deepest wish was to remain and witness the entire ceremony, yet I knew my presence in the room was becoming unbearable. The thought of overshadowing Hudson's joyful occasion with my own somber mood was too much to bear. With a heavy heart, I moved towards the door, feeling as though I was stepping out of my own life story. Just as my hand touched the door handle, a loud crash echoed behind me. Turning around, I saw a chair topple over. My name is Layla, and I am 27 years old. Often, I find myself pondering how different life could have been if that tragic accident had never occurred. Hudson and I were orphaned young. I was 13, and he was just 8. Our parents died returning from a weekend getaway. By the time we reached the hospital, they had already passed away, plunging my world into a silent grief that was hard to comprehend. The one vivid memory that remains is holding Hudson's trembling hand tightly in mine. After the accident, Hudson and I were placed in a children's home. The staff was caring, and we managed to bond with the other children, but a persistent emptiness lingered within me. Determined to bring joy to Hudson's life, I vowed never to let him see me cry, believing my tears would only sadden him further. Embracing my role as his protective elder sister gave me a purpose, pushing my own grief aside to focus solely on his well-being. When I turned 19, I aged out of the children's home. Although there were programs available to help us pursue higher education, I opted against them, prioritizing Hudson's future over my own. I took on day jobs and attended night classes at a vocational school, making sacrifices to ensure that Hudson could have the opportunities one believed he deserved. I pursued a degree in event planning with a quiet aspiration of one day establishing my own venture. However, this dream was tucked away in the backdrop of a more pressing priority: to support my brother Hudson. To ensure he could attend college without financial stress, I took out loans and set aside my aspirations. I believed scholarships might ease the burden, but I didn't want Hudson preoccupied with financial worries while I could handle things. Watching Hudson diligently focus on his studies inspired me further to support him in any way possible. His commitment paid off when he graduated and secured a position with a financial manager. The day I learned of his job offer, emotions overwhelmed me. Our years of sacrifice and debt had finally culminated in something worthwhile. His happiness made every challenge we faced meaningful. Upon starting his job, Hudson began contributing $10,100 monthly back to me. I was tempted to ask him to save it for his own future, but his heartfelt message stopped me. "Sis, you did everything for me. It wouldn't feel right not to give something back. Please accept this." His acknowledgement of my sacrifices brought tears to my eyes once more. Moved by his gesture, yet determined not to depend on him, I began saving his contributions, hoping to return them should he ever need support. With the skills I acquired in college, I ventured into setting up my small event planning business. Initially working solo, the business gradually expanded as I gained more clients. Hudson started lending a hand during weekends, despite his demanding job. Everything seemed to align when Hudson shared exciting personal news. He had started dating someone named Chloe, who worked at a partner firm. Seeing the joy in his life brought me immense happiness and reaffirmed my decisions. My small business not only became a testament to my independence, but also a shared space where Hudson and I continued to support each other in new ways. A year later, Hudson shared with me his plans to marry while we strolled home from a dinner outing. As he spoke, a peculiar heaviness settled over me. Although I desired Hudson's happiness, I simultaneously experienced an inexplicable pang. Was it loneliness or perhaps the fear of losing him? I congratulated him with a smile, yet internally, I wrestled with a blend of feelings. Chloe, his intended, seemed decent enough, polite and kind during our interactions, though her smiles occasionally appeared somewhat reserved. This impression intensified during a dinner with Chloe's family, held at an upscale Japanese restaurant in preparation for the wedding. Both our parents conducted themselves with poise, yet there lingered an air of subtle condescension. "It's so admirable how far you've come from growing up in a children's home," Chloe remarked. Her words, outwardly benign, carried an undertone of judgment that was hard to ignore. Hudson, typically proud of our background, responded with polite restraint, his voice tinged with tension. After the dinner, as we talked, Hudson urged me not to worry. Despite his reassurance, the discomfort I felt was palpable, and it was clear he was affected too. Nonetheless, he was determined to make things work. More than anything, I wanted his happiness, even amidst these unsettling feelings. As the wedding preparations progressed, I made every effort to forge a connection with Chloe. We spent countless hours together, poring over guest lists and selecting dresses. While Chloe was consistently courteous, a hint of reserve lingered in her demeanor. During one of our discussions, she suddenly asked, "Is Hudson still sending you money?" Her question caught me off guard. "Honestly, I think it's a bit excessive now that we're getting married. Our financial priorities should shift," she added. I was momentarily at a loss for words. I understood her perspective, but she couldn't fully appreciate that to Hudson. The money was not just a reimbursement. It represented the life we had built together. Nevertheless, Chloe had a valid point, and it was time to consider setting boundaries. That evening, I resolved to speak with Hudson. "Chloe seems uncomfortable with the money situation," I mentioned, half expecting his disappointment. He appeared resigned yet firm. "Maybe it's time to reconsider," I suggested gently. "Hudson, you need to focus on your new family now." My heart ached as I spoke. Hudson was steadfast. "I'm not ready to stop, Layla. What we've shared, what you've done for me, I can't just walk away from that." His words brought tears to my eyes, which I quickly hid. "All right, Hudson. I understand," I replied, knowing that pressing the issue might only strengthen his resolve. For the moment, I decided to let him choose his path. The wedding day arrived, and I did everything in my power to promote their happiness, focusing especially on Hudson's joy. Ensuring his well-being had always been my priority, yet a part of me harbored lingering doubts. Could Chloe truly support him in the ways he needed? The ceremony was flawless, and as I watched Hudson's radiant smile, a profound sense of peace washed over me. All my sacrifices felt justified. However, the reception brought an unforeseen twist. "Please stop visiting Hudson," Chloe implored unexpectedly. Her words struck me like a sudden chill, disrupting the warmth of the celebration. In that moment, it felt as though the air was sliced by a dagger, plunging straight into my heart. The room fell eerily silent, every eye fixed on me. Rooted to the spot, I was enveloped in a sea of stares, my reaction frozen by shock. A wave of paleness washed over my face as my heart plummeted. Chloe's piercing look seemed to scream that I was an outsider, that I didn't fit in. Words failed me My throat constricted, choked by a tumultuous mix of anger, sorrow, and humiliation. Struggling to find my voice, the only thing I could muster felt alien and distant, as if someone else was speaking. I endeavored to maintain my dignity, to exit quietly without escalating the situation, but just as I reached for the door, a loud crash echoed behind me. I spun around to find Hudson standing defiant, his expression charged with fury. "Chloe, do you even realize what you've just said?" His tone was low, seething with indignation. Chloe appeared taken aback, unable to break away from his intense hold. "You have no clue what she has sacrificed for me," Hudson continued, his voice a mix of anger and fervor. "Without my sister, I wouldn't be standing here today. She gave up everything to help me chase my dreams." His declaration resonated around the room, silencing any potential interruptions. "I send her money every month, not out of charity, but out of respect and gratitude for everything she's done," Hudson explained, his words filled with conviction. Chloe stood there, immobilized, a mixture of shock and fear painted across her face. As murmurs began to ripple through the gathered family and guests, the atmosphere shifted, reflecting a newfound recognition of my sacrifices. "I've grown up alongside Layla, and she has always prioritized the needs of others above her own." As time passed, more and more of our friends and relatives began to acknowledge how pivotal she has been, especially to Hudson. Her contributions to our family are undeniable. During a particular gathering, the conversation shifted as guests expressed their support for her, causing Chloe's face to lose color. Then, a colleague of Hudson spoke up, revealing that Chloe often had a biting demeanor at work. This sentiment was echoed by another colleague, noting her tendency to be overly critical and demeaning. As more colleagues shared their experiences, I started to see a side of Chloe I hadn't recognized before, and with each revelation, Chloe's expression grew increasingly strained. She realized that the respect she believed she had within her professional circle was fading. Just as the atmosphere became more tense, the door swung open and a man strode in, his presence commanding immediate attention. Dressed impeccably and exuding a calm authority, he apologized for his tardiness. This was Mr. Mason, a well-known branch manager from one of Chloe's family business partners. Despite the assurances that it was merely a family misunderstanding, his keen gaze suggested he perceived more than what was spoken aloud. Upon being introduced to me, he remarked on having heard favorable reviews about my event planning business, which caught me off guard. He then learned that Layla, like him, had been raised in foster care. This shared background seemed to impress him even more. The room went silent as he spoke highly of those who overcome tough beginnings, acknowledging how Layla's resilient spirit was evident in her professional endeavors. This acknowledgement from Mr. Mason made it clear that overcoming adversity was something deeply respected at his company. We select partners based on merit, not their past. Excluding someone because of their history would contradict our principles. Hearing this filled me with pride and gratitude. Layla has been a cornerstone of our community, and Chloe's remarks were inappropriate. I agree, our family deserves better. Hudson's declaration had a sense of finality. "I can't marry someone who doesn't respect my family," Chloe stated, visibly upset. She was at a loss for words. Hudson then came over and embraced me tightly. "Thank you, Layla, for everything. I will always be here for you," he said. That moment was the beginning of a new chapter. Over time, my business expanded with Mr. Mason's support. I gained a reputation for my commitment and innovation in event planning. Hudson joined as my business partner, and together, we tackled new ventures. "We've achieved so much, Layla," Hudson noted, "and I am thankful for every step." Our relationship grew stronger, fostering a life enriched by support and new opportunities. Together, we kept advancing, building a brighter future side by side.